Good morning. Welcome back to one other episode of Raising Humans Together. Here we together deliberate on topics so we understand ourselves to help and nurture our children grow into beautiful human beings. Is homework a daily battle? That's the topic for us today. We know, we hear, we see, and even teachers complain that child has to do a certain amount of homework beginning from pre-KG, and many parents describe homework as being a daily challenge. Sit down, focus, finish your work, then you can go play. If you don't do, I will not do that, or if you do, I will do this, whatever. Somewhere we are assuming the child does not have discipline to do the homework. Now, this is something Richard Feynman, Nobel laureate, mentioned, that learning becomes fun when there is curiosity. Working or home working becomes interesting when the child is involved, when child understands the concept. Even beginning pre-KG, child may not understand the concepts and they don't have as much homework also. Now imagine writing letter A where they don't know what this letter A is. It's just a symbol for a sound, and then the child has to repeat writing it 5 times, 10 times. And if you observe, progressively the handwriting becomes worse. And that's the homework. So the child puts effort, and then eventually teacher or parent is going to tell him erase and rewrite. There's absolutely no interest in it. Somewhere that learning should feel different. For example, if you go to the higher levels, when we teach children about, let's say, birds, different kinds of birds in different geographies, and maybe a single name of a single bird with how is it called, the names of that bird in different languages. What am I learning about the bird? Right? And if the homework is to write the names of the bird, child is not at all interested. But if the same homework is like observe any bird, wait, observe any bird, look at how tall its legs are, how thin or thick the beak is, what is the color of the bird, what do you think the bird is called, in case, just, or give it your own name. Then the child begins to observe the bird. Wait for the birds to come. He keeps looking at the sky and the trees to spot any bird. Then the child is not memorizing facts about the bird. They're not copying a standard answer. They're not completing a worksheet, but somewhere they're experiencing. And then whatever they have experienced, coming back and writing it as homework or to draw something and show it to the class tomorrow is fun. It's something that they would love to do. It is meaningful work. Anytime anything becomes meaningless, purposeless, I don't see value in it. Even I would not do the homework. If you observe children, they are naturally very curious about the world around them. They are natural scientists. They keep asking you why, how, what happens if I don't do this? Then we say, try it. Now, what do you think will happen when you add tea powder to the boiling water? The child will not know. Do you want to try it? Then you go boil the water, child waits and waits, and in fact, my daughter's roommate, she was almost 18, 19 years old. She did not know when the water would start boiling. There was a recipe, they were in the college, they were to cook something. They looked up at the recipe and it said bring water to a boil. And she said, how do I know? I mean, I'm sure she was a topper in her school. She had done all her homework on time. So somewhere the homework should also call in for, or schools may not do it, but I as a parent, let's see what this chemical reaction is. Why does the water turn brown when you add tea powder into the boiling water? Let's find out. So how long you have to wait? You can play around with the knob, the intensity of the heat, bigger the heat, longer it boils, sooner it boils. So all those are curiosity, right? So the child will somewhere, when they begin to ask, why am I doing this? And they get an answer. Then it becomes interesting homework. So instead of telling, exam times, homework time, test times, we ask children, we ask the questions and they repeat, give us the answers. Instead of that, could we make it a little bit more interesting? What's the capital of Karnataka? The child will say whatever. And they say, why do you think so? They may not say Bangalore, they may say Tumkur, for example. Why do you think so? Why was it chosen as the capital? If you were the person given that authority, which one would you pick? Just randomly involve them rather than just saying, did you finish your homework? Then say, can you tell me what you learned today? Somewhere that learning has to happen because there's something they learned today which is incomplete, and tomorrow's lessons will become important because they're curious to know. It's like the episodes that we watch on daily serials. We are waiting for tomorrow's serial. So the child must wait for tomorrow's class in the school, tomorrow's homework that we do at home. Can I do it? Yes. Should I do it? Yes. There is no time, of course, but we don't need as much time. That little time where we are nagging the child to sit and do homework and why don't you focus, if I can change the way I approach this whole subject of homework, then the child, when they get interested, they do it on their own. As you're waiting for the bus to arrive in the morning for your child to board, you can be asking, what is that you did yesterday? You were saying something about Karnataka, something about capital. What is that you were writing? Thank you for reminding me. And evening he'll come and, Mom, do you remember? What's capital of Karnataka? The child will be now curious to ask you. And if the child is asking me, the child should also know the answer. So instead of learning about the facts, instead of us being worried about grades in the future, of course we need to be worried, but that cannot drive me on daily basis, using that as a motivation tool for my child to learn. In fact, my child may be demotivated. I see lots of children, especially in the 10th grade, they say, why do I have to study all of this? Right? There's no point in this. If you allow children to speak, they do speak that way. So playing with ideas, experimenting something, creating that curiosity. What was interesting that you learned today? What's something new that you learned today? Which class was the most interesting for you in the school today? And you can also put in some seed for their thought. Tomorrow, talk about this to your friend. I was on one of these sessions for children where he's talking about astrophysics. Beautiful, beautiful. But then 7-year-old is talking about the galaxies and the meteors and the names of all these stars that are going to be black holes soon. And there's so much of information. Child may also be very curious about knowing about the space and the sky. But then we got to do the balance. Is it curiosity? Am I sitting up on my terrace and watching the stars? Trying to identify the constellations and things like that? Or is it just some names they have memorized? That will carry us through to some extent, right? So focusing on understanding, not completing it. We have all completed our homeworks. We were all very studious students, but very conveniently we forgot also because there was no repetition of it, that somehow did not generate enough curiosity to make each of those subjects my career. A little older children, you could be talking about what was the hardest today, what was the most complicated question you attempted, not solved. Older children, 11, 12, 13, 14, where we cannot sit with them and make them do anymore. But engage them enough, can you explain it to me? I don't know. I mean, there's definitely many, many things I don't know. I may have learned, but I would have forgotten. No, can I allow my child to tell me that? Right? And if they have any questions, celebrate it. Wow, such questions I never asked. It never occurred to me. I wonder how you got this question. Be curious. That is when you make this whole discussion conversational. You are asking something, the child is telling something, it need not be right or wrong, but the minute the child kind of feels that he has forgotten or he doesn't know, he's curious to go back and check and make sure he has it right. You may have experienced it. I want to tell something, but I forget in the flow of conversation. Then, like, I wanted to tell you something. What is it? What is it? I go back digging to that question I had, and eventually, this is the question I had. So somewhere those conversations lead to a bit more digging in. It awakens the wonder. If you see, the bird that you saw, was it smaller or bigger than the one we saw yesterday? Oh, I didn't pay attention to that. Let me observe that this time. So I keep looking for that bird. Right? Awakening that wonder, preserving that curiosity. That is what makes homework interesting. Otherwise, it's going to remain a battle. It's like doing something I do not like to do. So we'll forever ask questions. Why is my child not interested in doing my homework? Instead of that, whatever rote homework schools give, can I make it interesting? We gave this suggestion to parent one time. Rather than writing letter A 5 times, letter A to be written big in a A4 size and trace it over it with different colored crayons. That's the same repetition. But now, each time the child draws with yellow color, he doesn't see it. Then on top, he lays out a red color. He sees the red, but there is also tinges of orange there, where yellow and red is kind of mixing. He's curious. Now he wants to try with another color, puts on blue over it, then puts on black over it. Black covers everything up. He says, no, next time I don't want to put black because I want to see other colors. So there is this curiosity element being brought in there in the same repetitive rote tracing of letter A. If you are writing it on a slate, write it over the chalk, then write it with your fingers. It's like erasing it. But then there is a dent made in that letter. And there's some chalk coming onto your finger. What's happening? Oh, you're magically erasing. What is erasing? That's curiosity that you can create. It is not because children become obedient that they start doing the homework. It's more because they become engaged with the content. They see the results. It's like interactive. It's like having conversation with a friend. You say something, she says something, and there is a conversation. But if it's only you saying and you don't get response, you're not interested in the conversation. So bring that curiosity, bring that interest, let children get engaged in learning so the homework doesn't become a painful process every single day of the child's life and my life also as a parent. Thank you.